With that, let me introduce one of my favorite tenants. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but one of my favorite tenants, Mark DeRespinis of Esoterra Culinary Gardens. Mark came to farming full-time in 2014 after years of travel, cultural study, and art making. And he was fortunate enough to catch the wave of information about no-till farming practices, which has informed his farm and his farm practices. And I have a very long bio, but I just crossed out everything and I put relentlessly curious, because that's the best way to describe Mark. And one other thing I want to add is Stefan talked about a strawberry that tastes like a strawberry. And let me tell you, Mark grows these Mer de Bois strawberries that are like the most strawberry you've ever tasted in your whole life. And I think that's just one thing he grows, and everything on his farm is like that, and it's so inspiring. So we're gonna hear from Mark, and you too can be inspired. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I will say that I left academia 23 years ago or something, and haven't thought about making a slide presentation since. And so this was a really fun exercise of learning how to navigate Google Slides in this case. So the title of the presentation is Growing for Chefs and Growing for the Future. And I hope I can touch on a few things that may have some relevance for this moment in time, and digesting some of what we've all been working on this expanded awareness about regenerative practices. And in the application of growing vegetables, we've been doing some things, and I'd love to share it with y'all. So I'm going to press the green button, and here we go. Wait, do something. Oh, I did point it there? Okay, there we go. Okay, who am I? This is a little indulgent here, but I do want to give you some background. It's a picture of me, and here I am. So originally I was on an academic path, and I studied history and literature. And the quest, I think, at that time was to try to understand why we are the way we are. Because, to be honest, it didn't feel right when I was growing up. And so that was my master's paper was Religion and the Decline of Magic in Modern England. So how do we bring magic back? We will answer that question in this presentation. But after getting kind of frustrated with the objectivity, sorry, no offense to all the academics in the room. I spent 7 years as an artist trying to immerse myself in the world and produce beauty. And that was not where I was going to settle by any means. And when I found a connection to plants and the land, that journey started. And it's been the most beautiful thing that's held me in a way that feels like it's sustainable and can grow in a good way. So I became a farmer. And that being a farmer at first was a bit of a fumbling process. My first year of full-time farming in 2014, well, I always tell people that I kill more plants than I've killed any more plants than most people have ever touched in their lives. It's a problem, but you learn from each time. And starting a farm, I think I got a feel for it as I was raising my family that you couldn't just be a farmer, you needed also to be a business person. And so I started to get curious about what it is to be an entrepreneur. So we're gonna cover some of that in this presentation as well. So, okay. Esoterra Culinary Garden. I wish I had a better, bigger picture of the land, because this is really just a small little wedge of this beautiful property that I was fortunate by 1 point to win the lease on in 2020 when it came up in the City of Boulder's open space and mountain park system. And it really is it was an opportunity that I can't explain aside from fate, and and just feeling really grateful and humbled by it, because it definitely didn't look like this anywhere near when we got there. There were some significant challenges, and it did require tapping into a deep well of vision about what's possible, and collaborating really closely with so many stakeholders, first and foremost the city of Boulder, in really seeing this project unfold, and talking about how we can move towards the vision of what the needs were on the property. We currently have a little over 3 acres of permanent no-till vegetable beds. We have about a half an acre under cover, and extensive perennial hedgerow plantings, over 300 species of culinary plants. I was thinking of Jay's presentation earlier, and how maybe this ideal might be to have 100 species per acre, and how there's a peculiar expression of that in the garden, and that kind of density and diversity is something that is a lot to keep track of, but it sure is exciting. It's one of the greatest puzzles that I've ever entertained in my life, and it's enjoyable to try to maintain relationships with all these plants. And for our marketing, we do focus on year-round sales to local restaurants. As I was moving back to Boulder after starting my first farm in New Mexico, I really was humbled by the quality of the agricultural community here, and some of the amazing farms that were already in operation here. And I really did not want to compete with any of them, especially as a little small startup farm. And so I was really excited about the opportunity of working with chefs, and that's played out in a variety of ways and supported the diversity. But it's also tapped me into an understanding of how much need there is in the wholesale market, both in institutions and in restaurants. And you really need to think of every single dollar that's spent on produce or any product from out of this state as being a drain on this land. And that to me is really sad. I saw this in New Mexico, my first farm, when we redirected resources that were being spent on produce for the restaurant on the resort I was growing for into the land. It wasn't just a matter of building this beautiful garden that had all these collateral benefits. It also, that's it. It wasn't just a matter of selling produce and replacing the produce from California with produce from New Mexico in that instance. It was also all the collateral benefits that came with that. I know I only have a half hour, so I'm going to go move here. Let's see. So our mission was to provide the highest quality produce to the best chefs in the region, and to be a culinary pilgrimage destination. I want to elaborate on that a little bit, the second part. So my first mentor, Gordon Tooley, up in True Trust, New Mexico, he has this beautiful orchard up there, 150 varieties of apples, 30 varieties of pears, everything under the sun you can imagine. It used to just be, not just, but it used to be a pretty exposed site of juniper and pinon. And he transformed it into this amazing garden. That was an oasis of diversity, and really essentially has seeded much of the region with these beautiful fruit tree genetics. And I realized that once I went to that property once, I was changed forever. And so that's the essence of the pilgrimage intention. A pilgrimage is a place where you go to honor the sacred nature of the land and our relationship to it. And I feel like to actually see these plants in here, and not as a product that you buy in a package, but more as like a process of growth and an expression of the land, really has the capacity to change people and provide hope and opportunity. So that's what we're aiming to do. So the foundational ecological principles of the farm are: we are a no-till farm. We have an ethic of nonviolence, of preservation and proliferation of life in the garden. We have, as I said, 300 permanent production beds. There's benefits of having permanent beds. We plant as early as possible in the spring. We plant sometimes in February, sometimes in early March. But what that allows us to do is to maintain growing plants in our beds for as long a window as possible. So we start planting as early as possible. A portion of the farm is overwintered, so it already has roots in the ground, cover crops or cash crops in the ground that live in those beds over the winter. And then we plant immediately in the spring as soon as possible, and that gets that engine of photosynthesis going. I really do feel it as an engine, as a motivating force that accelerates growth and health and resilience, and that's proven out and in the science as well. The sun's energy allowing the plant to produce exudates that feed the biology, and then the plant getting what it needs, and that gives us that reliability and that consistency and ability to know that for the most part, when we plant it, we can harvest it and get it out into the world as good food for people. So we also use the paper pot system to keep all those beds planted. Definitely look at it if you don't know what that is. It's really important. It allows us, instead of planting seeds in the ground and then staring at them and waiting for them to germinate, we're able to kind of concentrate those early phases of life for those plants in the greenhouse, and then have a growing crop in those beds for longer. And then when we harvest that crop out, we can immediately replace it with another plant. And so you think of really like this activity under the ground as being what's something we really enjoy perpetuating. Green, purple, growing plants. Look at lots of beds, always growing things. It's a perpetual process. I'm going to put this up here. Everyone else has mentioned rhizophagy, and I think it's just so exciting. And this was not even something that I could have learned when I was in school, because it wasn't even known. And it's not a great diagram either. I had a hard time figuring out how to pull a good diagram. But so basically in the root zone of the plants, you have these active zones of exudate production at the root tips, and this is these sugary juices that kind of entice them. I'm going to give a non-scientific explanation, poetic explanation. So it kind of entice the microbes in the rhizosphere in close to the plant. They actually support the microbes in their own processes as well, and then the plant engulfs and actually eats the microbes, digest their cell walls to get access to the nutrient content that the microbes have mined from the soil, essentially pre-digesting the mineral component of the soil. And the plant's able to then access a bounty, essentially, of mineral resources in the soil, which then allows it to form and be its best self. And this isn't a termination of the biology's life in all cases. In some cases it is, but in other cases the remaining parts of the bacteria actually are spit out from the root, and they produce new root hairs, which increases the surface area of the root zone. And then they go ahead to revisit the rock component of the soil, and in this dizzy cycle are enticed back in again. Beautiful thing, the microbes. So let's go to the microbes. We have a lot to cover here. Well, this is biologically intensive farming. So this is one of our foundational ecological principles. We identify biological solutions to our ecological problems. That's something I'm deeply committed to. We are practitioners of inoculation. This was transformative for me. When I started farming, I was very excited about even the idea of introducing a mycorrhizal inoculant with my seeds when I started my seeds. And I saw benefit from that. And then I think I encountered somewhere along the way an article by John Kempf who talked about, repeated application of these microbial cocktails, and I just kind of took that and ran with it. Okay, this is what we got to do. We got to just keep putting it out all the time, because maybe there's some sort of protective field. Again, not the scientists talking here, but we're kind of like trying to blitz the garden with biology. And in order to do that, we work with some amazing partners. Some of you, I'm sure, have talked to Sirius Biotechnology, who's here. I remember when I started the farm, we had an issue with alkalinity in the well water, which sometimes we were using in our tunnels, and I was very concerned about the buildup of whatever builds up when you use alkaline water. And so Lauren had recommended me talking to Jim and Rob. They were then called Van Grow Biotechnology, and they had a microbial solution. I was extremely suspicious. I actually remember, like, microbial solution to alkaline well water? What are you talking about? And I remember sitting at the post office in Boulder and being like, she's telling me that, and I'm like, all right, I'll talk to this guy. He brings it over. He wanted me to do side-by-sides, and I'm like, look, I'm not doing side-by-sides. We got too much going on. We're going to put this out everywhere, and if it works, it works. Great. And so we just began doing that. And, now we're 5 years into some of these high tunnels, and, there's always challenges along the way, but we've had basically consistent production using no-till and our biological practices in these tunnels. We've had testing of the soils and seen that they're doing really well in there. And so we maybe dodged that bullet of putting alkaline water using biology as a solution. And so, there's numerous solutions. I wish I could have listed all of the microorganisms. I thought about actually putting a slide, I think it's Destiny's Child, where they go, say my name, say my name. But they list all the names of all the bacteria, because they're amazing. It's Lactobacillus casei, Bacillus subtilis. We use fungal organisms for control of different pest species like Bavaria bassiana. It's a dizzying and exciting world. So biological solutions to ecological problems. And we nurture our invisible allies. I call them our invisible allies because you can't see them. And yes, people have come out and they've done biological assays. And I believe when they say it's in the bottle that it's in the bottle, and we put it out there, and it's this sense of coat. You can't really see it. I don't have a microscope. I don't want to have a microscope. I'm just glad to just know that it's out there working. We are farmers of microbes, and as we learned in the last slide, the plants are really farmers of microbes as well, which is a really interesting perspective on things. Steve Esoterra there, local worm producer. This is what's so exciting is we'll talk a little bit about the business side of this, and one thing that's really exciting about selling vegetables to people and then having money is that I can take it and spend it on these amazing businesses that are doing amazing things and make these really significant investments in these biological solutions. And so something I think about often too is tithing. 10% of your income to the church. Well, 10% of our income goes to the Church of Mother Earth. And I think it's a really beautiful thing. And this is part of feeding the local economy too. You spend your money locally, and then that money circulates in the local economy, and we have this thriving ecosystem of businesses. And I really am excited about that. Arbico's not local, but they really are a fun way to geek out about biological solutions to ecological problems. The habitat imperative. We want to be the host with the most. And that means, having flowering plants at all times. It means having soil that's protected, consistent moisture. It means having these niches for everything to thrive. And we have seen, crazy birds that I never thought I'd ever see show up. I can't identify them, but very wild things are happening in this little oasis that we have out there. And I'm just really excited about it. We work with Dean Chapela of Nimbus Road Apiaries to support 50 hives. And one of my favorite things to share about the farm is in the pretty intense drought of whichever year, 24 maybe, 23, one of those periods where it hadn't rained for 5 months or something. It was really bad. And Dean was actually in the process of pulling all his hives back from multiple yards around the county to feed them at home, and he had come to check on our hives, and he said that he actually needed to bring back additional supers for our hives. And he said to me, one of the proudest things I've heard out there, he said, if all my yards were like this, it would be one of my best honey years ever. And I said, wow, okay, we're doing something right. That's great, and the honey sure is good too. So we're thinking not only just like honeybee forage, but also tiny nectaries. I love that concept of tiny nectaries. So we're looking at flowers that have little tiny nectaries. So you're thinking of your umbels, and you have flowering coriander. Like sometimes it's like a nice accident when you end up with big flowering beds. Well, we do tend to try to be intentional about having umbels flowering at all times, or having alyssum, proliferating around the farm. One of our great allies in the perennial realm is anise hyssop, and that is really one of the most productive bee plants. In an acre of anise hyssop produces more honey than any other plant. Right? That's exciting. And it's also just an incredible perennial that is delicious as well. So added benefit there. But this is an opportunity to have relationships with these plants and fulfill our habitat and host with the most imperative. Okay, perennials. Oh yeah, I was just talking about that. So I'm very curious. I did have for a minute there perennials with a little parentheses for profit, ? Because I am curious about how we can fit that into our marketing on the farm, and maybe because all these things take a lot of care. When you're establishing a bed of perennials, they still need to be weeded, they still need to be mulched, they still need to be pruned, they need to be maintained in various ways. We're trying to figure that out but really, my desire is just to have relationships with these plants, because they bring so much joy. You see that elder bush there in full flower? This is one of the first things I planted when we got to the farm, and now every year they put on these bounty of beautiful flowers. There is no reason why we don't have an elderberry and flower industry in Colorado. It's absurd. It's an incredible ingredient. When I was in Copenhagen last year, you walk into a 7-Eleven, you can get an elderflower cider. They're woven into the cuisines and the food culture of these regions, and so we have this opportunity as producers and consumers to do that here as well with plants that thrive here. It might make more sense to have peach production on the Western Slope, because at any particular time, peach tree is liable to not be very productive here on the Front Range. But elder is pretty reliably productive. Other perennials that work really well for us and are some of our most productive. One of the most productive beds on the farm this year was actually just a beautiful bed of nettles. And I enjoy eating so much nettles in the spring and in the fall. And, medicine makers, et cetera, et cetera. The proliferation of contexts of consumption. And just to build on Stefan's talk earlier, when you think of we are the cows. We are eating the plants, and the plants have crazy phytochemical profiles that you got to eat them for it to work. But they, those elderberries, they're very rich in anthocyanins and many other beneficial compounds that we can't even begin to wrap our minds around as lay people. Leave it to the scientists, but take their word for it. And also the ancestral wisdom, really, that this sense of, in all of our cultures, we would have had relationships with these plants. Doesn't matter. You go back 75 years, all of your grandparents, would have relationships with many of these plants. And so we just need to remember. That's it. Okay. Farm business. Farm/business. I'm a student of postmodernism. Let's see. Farm stats. All right. So our sales CAGR, compound annual growth rate, since 2018, 25% a year, right? steady growth. It's been a combination of adding production area and also kind of growing the market, building the relationships with our customers. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Total current customers, we work with 50 restaurants. And that's a good number. It's a tricky number to maintain the relationships with all those needy chefs, but it's rewards the effort. So land and expand. So we're not looking to have, and I think if it was up to a lot of not my customers, but a lot of people want to get some stuff from the farm. Right, and so the reality was I don't respond to a lot of requests to purchase our product because, unless you're really serious about it, then I don't have the bandwidth to do a $100 a week order and deal with the, invoicing and delivery and all this stuff. I'm not looking for, a bullet spray of produce around the area. I want to concentrate on these relationships where we're telling real stories, right? We all had a beautiful meal with Black Belly. Been working with them since the beginning. If their orders dip down and they get kind of small, I'm kind of hey guys, what's going on? I kind of rely on you, why are you not celebrating what we have available in the garden right now? So there's a lot of education involved with that, but what we're looking for is net revenue retention. We want customers to spend more with us each year. I understand it takes time to adapt your organization to the vicissitudes of the local seasons and such. But anyway, total full-time, part-time employees, about 15. It ends up being about 7 full-time equivalent employees. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We're running out of time. Farm stats, total beds on the farm. We have 300 beds. So that's a unit of production. In those 300 beds, there is a wild procession of crop varieties that moves through those beds, over 300 different crop varieties. So that gives us many different opportunities to diversify what's extracted. And I'm not going to go into what we put back in, but we put a lot of stuff back in. Crop rotations are, again, it's a wonderful puzzle. Annual revenue per bed, that's an important metric. I mean, we're trying to figure out every time a crop goes into a bed, we're trying to figure out what is the value of that turn. And then if we can get 2 turns or 3 turns or 4 turns on that bed, this is a business after all. Again, I'm saying I've got labor payroll is pretty crazy and I'm committed to it. And so, there's a lot of responsibilities we have to the numbers. So revenue for bed is something we think about. Doesn't mean every decision we make is based on maximum yield, but it does mean that we calculate that and we're aware. So yeah, I am in good company. I mean, one of the most beautiful things about this farm has been the people that have come through it and are willing to devote their lives to the plants and tearing up. They're right there, the Esoterra, amazing farmers. And yeah, so it's crazy. It's a very high pressure environment. And I do find actually people who have farm experience before often come with farm trauma. It's just really stressful out there, in the middle of the year. And I've had to learn a lot from my people about, how to manage my emotions and such. So we got a lot of stuff to cover here, but yeah, living wage. I mean, I find that when I pay my people more, which is really hard to do, I can ask more of them and we have a more intact value proposition. What is the exchange? I value you, I need you to value me and my needs. And together we can do amazing things. Compartmentalization, we really focus on having like each department, production, harvest, and garnish is actually has a very focused leader and team, and they are focused on those aspects of the operation. It could get a little bit, it's almost siloed at times. Like you're like, man, I wonder what it's like on the other side. And we have people who often will like start in harvest, move over to production, or vice versa to get the different experience. It's kind of like a farming master's program, or at least no-till, master's program, vegetable production. Anyway, onward. Okay, customer relationship management, I won't go too much into this, but we talked about it a little bit there. Like there's a lot of education involved. And we build these relationships with our customers, and then what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure they know, because what I hear from them all the time is they want to support us. They want to do it, but it's hard. Because if something's there one day and gone the next, and they built a menu item around it, these are issues that have hampered or something. Isn't that where you put clothes? It hampered the farm to table movement since its inception. Is we need more synergies between producers and these outlets, the restaurants or institutions that are purchasing the food. So we work really closely and try to figure out clear ways to communicate, when products are coming into production and when they're going out of production, and so they can plan their menus accordingly in this instance. I like this quote. It was in a friend of mine's presentation recently. If your customer buys once, you made a sale. If they come back, you built trust. If they tell others, you built a brand. And that is, part of the focus of this project is to have a viable brand. And I say I haven't had a marketing problem since the first couple of years of the business. I've had a production problem because a lot of word of mouth, chefs moving around, we just only can do so much when it comes down to it and grow so much. And we're trying to grow sustainably. So anyway, there's a lot of need out there for people who are producers who are going to meet the market where it's at and build good relationships. So the way that we do that is with succession planting. This is really important. I mean, the only way that I've been able to score menu items with restaurants is if I can say, look, I'm not going to say no to you. I'm not going to say no to you for the next 2 months. Go ahead, run with it, Otherwise, it's just like we can only do specials. 1 minute left. Okay. So salad greens, mokum carrots, beets, all planted almost every week, essentially, for the longest possible season. It's a management nightmare, but it's also a management dream when it comes down to it, because you have a very clear sense with a very detailed plan of what needs to happen. So we succession plant. Specialty produce. You can grow anything you want when it comes down to it. And there's some responsibility to create a market, and that is relationship focused, and you need to basically either meet a market where it's at, or but it's really, for me, it's been about having relationships with the plants. We have these core drivers of revenue, and then we have lots of opportunities to experiment. Sometimes those experiments end up becoming primary crops and really contributing to the top line. This is like a whole bevy of stories right here, but New Zealand spinach, purple Napa cabbage, sprouting cauliflower, green garlic, mokum carrots on the bottom, celtus, tardivo, which you ate today, calendula, pink chicory, that's a flowering leek, and badger flame beets. These are all things that you can't necessarily find in the grocery store. Which is actually to our advantage as growers, because people want to have real experiences. And unfortunately, a lot of the produce coming out of the industrial agricultural system is not distinguished in that particular way. So we can curate our offerings here. I love chicory. Sorry, Vanessa's gonna make me stop before I wax poetic about chicory. Celtus, agretti, and spigarello, oh my. All right, So the question I asked for you all to meditate on is, what is Colorado cuisine? Because I think often of what happened in Northern Europe with Nordic cuisine, now legendary the world over. I got to travel to Copenhagen, like I said already, sorry for being redundant, last year to go to Noma. And the reality is they built a entire global reputation on being devoted to what they had in their environment. And we have an opportunity to do that here, that is in the process of happening. How will you be a part of it? So thank you very much. Appreciate it.